And so what do you, like when you said to me that day, you said Evanston's getting too liberal?
Yeah.
What is that? What do you mean?
Because they're given, my belief is people need to earn what they get. This community does not allow people to earn what they get. They give it to them.
This community, Evanston?
Evanston, they give it to them. They make things too easy to get. For me, it's like a form of slavery. But instead of being in shackles, you shackle here. Because you're not thinking. All you're thinking about is how to manipulate the system. This is one reason I got out of social services. Because there was one day, and the offices was over here. I had administrative assistant positions open. This young lady came in that I knew that's very sharp. Very sharp. I talked with her and I offered her, I told her to come in my office. She did. I said, look, I have this position open. It's an administrative position. This is what you're going to make, which was a decent salary. You get health care for you and your children. You also will send you to school. You can go to school, but we pay for that. Okay? And she looked at me and she said, Hecky, let me think about that. So I looked at her and said, what the hell you got to think about? She said, I just got to think about it. So she went home. She said, I'll come back tomorrow and I'll tell you where I'm at. So I thought she played this game because she might want a little bit more money. So she came back the next day, came in my office. She says, I'm not taking a position. I said, what the hell do you mean you're not taking a position? She says, I can't. She says, because I'll lose part of my WIC program. I will lose part of my Section 8. I will lose this. I can basically go to school free because I'm on this program. She said, I make more money staying at home. And my wife will tell you, I came home that day because I was getting kind of tired of I was there long enough to see parents that used our program. Then I'm starting to see the kids coming in there, just manipulating the system. And I knew they were manipulating the system. And I told my wife, I said, I am an enabler, and I'm part of the problem. I can't deal with that crap. She said, well, why don't you resign? I said, because we need the money. We had just got married. She said, we don't have any children. So what do you really like doing? I said, I really like going into the restaurant every evening. My mother was working in here at the time and working with the kids over there because I'm teaching them something. They're learning and they're workers. So she said, well, why don't you just do that? I said, well, if we need them. No, we don't. Not right now. She signed. So we sat there. We wrote a letter of resignation, and I've been here ever since. And I have had a number. I've been here on this corner 33 years, going on 34. And I've had a lot of kids come through here. I got kids one is an airline pilot. I have nurses that come through here. And these kids have come back here. They pushed to get the street named after me. And my reward has come from. That's where my reward comes from. And that's why this is why I say that. And let me just give you another deal. Because my great-grandfather, see, nobody tells you these stories. My great-grandfather was born into slavery. And he had two other siblings. They were born into slavery. And in New Madrid, Missouri. And I went down there. And I went there. I even went to the cotton field where they picked cotton. The later historical showed me that. But I want to say this to you. That was my great-grandfather. My great-great-grandmother escaped from there underground to Iowa, which Iowa was a free state. Okay, and then they went to Muscatine, Iowa, because I did my research on it. I went through Ancestry.com, I called, I did a lot of research on this, and I'm just giving you the top of it, So they went to Muscatine, and my great-grandfather met my great-grandmother there, and they got married, okay? And then they had my grandmother, and they moved there. So they had my grandmother had my dad and two other siblings. but they moved to Evanston. Now my great
From
grandfather
Muscatine.
from Muscatine.
Why did they come?
I don't know. That's one question I don't know. And I'm asking that same question. I want to get that answer some kind of way. But they came to Evanston. It was like, why didn't you land up in Chicago? How did you land up in Evanston? But anyway.
When was it, you know?
Yeah. What year was what? When they came to Evanston? 1904. And then he became a barber on downtown Evanston. He had him and I guess a couple of other guys, they had a barber shop there. But back then you cut white people's hair. That was a servant kind of deal. This man saved his money, worked his butt off, saved his money, and then bought a house, not bought a house, but had a house built, okay, on Church Street that is still standing.
Where is it?
1812 Church. We'll take a ride. And he put a one-man barber chair in there, and he cut hair from there. Now, there was not giving black people money then. Pay cash.
This is your grandfather.
This is my great-grandfather. He paid cash. He built that. He built that. So it's like, and then my father also had 9 kids. There's 9 of us. He scrubbed floors on this North Shore. He also, back then, he had 9 kids, and they wouldn't give black people money back then when he was doing this. But he bought a house, and he bought it on contract. My mother's still living in that house on Lake Street. Okay, 1000 Lake.
So
your
dad's job was servant?
Servant. He was a servant. I mean, he scrubbed floors.
In Evanston?
No. Winnetka, Wilmette, and he used to walk to work because he didn't have a car. And we never had hand-me-outs, as that my dad would call it, and taught us never to take hand-me-outs or anything from government. They didn't. Well, they wouldn't give anything anyway, but they made their way. So all that's to say to you is this. If they could do all that back then, and all these opportunities black people have in this community, and they don't really take advantage of it. I think a lot of it has to do with the war on poverty, because you had a lot of people like you feeling guilty, and they just started giving. See, 2 things should be free in this country. 2 things. It's real simple: education and healthcare. And this is what I'm talking about. In Evanston, even when I was coming along, we had little programs, but you learn the work ethic, and you work for what you get. And you know, when you work for what you get, you feel better about it instead of somebody just handing it to you. You know, well, you do, and I believe people need help, but it's not a deal that you stay on, the rest of your life. So anyway, that's the background, and that's my belief. And I think in this city, it's just too much, and that's what I'm saying. It's a little too liberal. It's part of this community. I don't know if it's feeling guilty or they're feeling good about what they feel that they're doing.
So do you think that when you were growing up, it was less liberal? Like,
how did
you turn around? I mean, if you were this kind of, just from things that I've read, this troublemaker, or I think you had in an interview said you used to steal radios from cars. You said you knew the streets.
Right, and that was because also, not to blame anybody else, but I got with the wrong people, and it's part of rebellion,
So how did you?
Because I decided I wanted to.
It was a decision.
Yeah, it was a decision on my part.
Do you know when that decision happened?
That decision happened when I was in New Orleans.
Tell me about it.
Well, I left here one night. We was at this nightclub.
How old were you?
Well, actually, I was about 21, 22, and plus I was a teenage parent too. So I understand all that kind of stuff too. So anyway, I was at this nightclub down the street, and have you ever heard the song Superfly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the guys were standing up there, main coats and the whole bit, and just rocking them against the wall, and I'm sitting there, a couple of girls around me and so forth, and I looked at it, I said, this is stupid. What's going on? So that night I made a decision. I got in my car. It was just, it was just problems around here. I needed to get away. So then I got in my car and I drove to New Orleans, me and a friend. And I stayed there for a couple of years. And what was so good about that, that was the best thing ever happened to me, because I had a chance to understand and see what real racism was all about. I had a chance, because my grandmother, by the way, my grandmother and my uncle, and they lived in New Orleans, because that's where my mother's from.
I was going to ask you why you went there.
My mother's from there. And we used to always go visit them. So anyway, in New Orleans, everything goes. Everything goes. I mean, you could have beer in a car, and this is okay. And I was a single man, had my own apartment because I got a job down there and all that. And one morning, I got up, looked at myself in the mirror, and I said, I got to get the hell out of here. I'm killing myself. So I came back to Evanston, and then that's when I finished high school. And that's when I finished
in your 20s?
Yes, yeah. I walked across the stage, and I did that for my mother.
So what was it? What was it in New Orleans that...
I had a chance to see a lot that they didn't have, but we had. I thought every place was like Evanston. And what my father had done, he stuck with his family, and he bought my house, and I knew I could get to school here, and I knew I'd get back. When I went back to high school, what happened was I talked to the superintendent and asked him, I said, look, I need to finish my high school diploma. If I get into Oakton, Oakton Community College, would you count those credit hours toward my high school diploma? And he told me this. He says, Hecky, if you can do that, no problem. I cut the deal with them, and I was the first person that ever done that. And I got my credits from there, and they gave me my high school diploma. And I said, I got to walk across the stage. He said, well, I can let you walk across, night school stage. I said, because I got to do this for my mother.
What about your siblings? Did they all?
All of them were fine. I was.
You were the rebel,
right? But I'm the only one that finished college. College wasn't talked a lot about in the family. It was, get your career job.
Right, you get a job, you make money.
Right.
So do they all live around here? We are all the Powell kids.
They were around. I got two sisters in Atlanta, Georgia. They've been there for a number of years, and the rest of them around here. I got one that passed away.
Are they all fairly successful, or?
You better not get on welfare in our family. You better not get any government in our family. You better
coming
not.
From your dad.
Coming from my dad and coming from my great grandfather. You better not. And it's easy to get something for nothing. Yeah.
Would you ever run for office?
No.
Really?
Because I ran before, and I won. I was on the school board. It's not what I want to do, because I think you have more of an effect and make changes by holding politicians accountable, and also I love working with my kids here, and I love seeing people grow. And I went to Haven Lord because we used to live on Green Bay Road, where the school is at right now, not Haven School, but I forget the name of it. But the other school behind Haven School. Kingsley. There used to be apartment buildings there. And that's where we grew up there. That was Afro-American, part of it. But right there. But then on the other side of Lincoln Street, all that kind of stuff. Right? As you could tell, it wasn't but a few of us blacks, about 3 or 4 of us there. Then they wanted to tear that down and do some other stuff with it, so they moved us. It was kind of like slum. It was kind of like a little slum area, but just like we talked about apartheid, where the shanty, how they kept. That's how my mother and father and the people there kept the house very clean. But there was a lot of work that the landlord didn't do. So anyway, we moved out of there and we moved on to Ashland, and I went to Dewey School there, which was an integrated school.
So you only went to integrated schools? You never went to foster school?
No, and it was really interesting. because my parents wanted us to have a good education, and they felt you couldn't get a good one in Foster. Even though we lived in the Foster school area, they used another address to get us over to Dewey School. See, it's really interesting. But in life, kids don't have those problems. It's
Right.
the adults who have the problem.
Right.
And it's just like when I was at this school, and I went to visit a friend, even my sister. When we went, you were talking, you're supposed to go to the front door. But the parents, and you didn't realize at the time, we had to go to the back door. But you didn't realize, you just, okay.
Like,
so
we go to the back door.
You go to the back door.
Like it never occurred, you never analyzed it.
And just like one of my sister, one of her friends, came in this restaurant, it might have been about 10 years ago, white girl. She came in, she said, "Where's your sister living at?" And so forth. I said, "Well, she's out in Naperville." She said, "Well, I need a phone number." I said, "Fine." She said, "I really want to apologize to her because my mother used to make her come to the back door, and that really still bothered me because she told me she didn't want any niggas coming to the front door." And that stayed on that girl's head all those years.
So when you were growing up, were most of your friends black, or what were you most comfortable with? Who did you hang out with?
Well, we had a combination. That's the deal. We, especially at Dewey School, we had a combination of. We had a guy named Andy Powell I stay in touch with today. He used to play the bongos all the time. He loved the African movies and all that kind of stuff. And in fact, he played the bongos for not Aretha Franklin, but I forget the singer. But he's still around. He married a black woman.
Oh, he's a white guy.
He's a white guy, married a black woman. And then we had a lot of black friends. There was a guy named Michael Myers who lived there, white guy. So it was a good combination. Yeah.
And you hung out, went to their houses,
Yeah, what's interesting, we would go to their houses, but they couldn't come to our houses.
Do you know any story about houses being moved from one part of Evanston to the Fifth Ward?
Yeah, I know. I know of. There's one right on Emerson Street that was moved from that was North Evanston, and that was Sonny's guy named Sonny. Their house was moved over there. I could show it to you.
And is he still around?
No, he passed away.
And do you know the story behind it?
I don't know the story, but I can get that story from Mr. Robinson. Leon Robinson was one of his family. He still is, but he's kind of sick. But anyway, the richest family, black family, and in fact, they competed with white folks as far as financially. He owned the bus company. He owned the bus company,
yeah.
and you've heard of Henry Butler, right? He also was a rich man back in the day, and he was a very, very rich man. We're getting ready to put a plaque on his. We're getting ready to put a tombstone on his gravesite because people have forgot about him. But anyway.
So it was moved to Emerson from.
It was, from my understanding, it was from the north side of Evanston. But also, my understanding, also you had blacks living down by, which was swamp area down by the lake, near the lake. And when they wanted to develop that area, they pushed blacks west.
Your great-great-grandfather was a slave.
Yeah, he was born into slavery. Yes, he was. And his father and his two siblings, he was the master. He was white. He was the plantation owner. He was white. And guess what? He was a minister. I researched, and when I'm still working on because I'm starting on my mother's side. And see, the thing about it was interesting, especially my mother's side. And those older people, they never talked. I'm telling you, one night, I had a liver transplant.
Oh,
yeah, and I was recovering. And I decided, I have to do something. So I always wanted to know, so I got on Ancestry and I started working on it because I couldn't work enough. And I started working on it. And I'll never forget that one night we researched that was my great-great-grandmother, his mother, where she was on the census and where it said that she could not read or write. And I just started crying because it was like, just think about that and all that she had been through. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it because, if you read about other things like that in other people's.
Right, this is you.
This is me.
And do you talk to your mom? Do you have people who you can talk to about?
Well,
story.
You got some good questions there. This is the man who impregnated my great-grandmother.
And he was the minister. He
Well,
grew up in England?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He came to the States and then started a plantation, and then
I think it's one of the brothers or something started that. My grandmother married Hecky Powell. She married a Powell, and that's how my father got the Ford Powell. But she named him Forrest White. My father was named after him.
And how did they get to Missouri?
They originated from my great-great-grandmother was from Nigeria. One of the things that I did too, one of the things I wanted to know about, that's my DNA.
You're 68% African.
Europe,
22%. 10% Great Britain. Native American, 6%.
Well, that's why I'm a true mutt. That even came down to a deal that, I don't know if you remember the story, but someone was reported wrong, and it was real simple. And I'm sitting on the school board, and they're going through this thing. It really pissed me off, actually. They were really going through this deal of race. And then they came to the one that came biracial. And my question was what is biracial? They said, well, that's if somebody's black married to someone white. I said, whoa, wait a minute. What if it's somebody Mexican married to somebody black? That's biracial, isn't it? No. I said, whoa. What if there's a Japanese married to somebody white? Isn't that biracial? No, that's not how it has to be black and white. I said, that's bullshit. I said, all of y'all, in fact, we need to get rid of all this stuff because in America, we're all in mutts. And they took that like I'm calling
that was
kids
huge.
Like
do you care when these controversies happen?
I love it.
Do you? You could care less?
Especially if I feel that I'm right, I'm standing for something.
Like you don't care?
I don't care. It really stopped because guess what? Obama said that they asked him what kind of dog he was going to get. And he said, I'm going to get a mutt just like me. And and then I wrote in, I said, why don't y'all fucking go tackle Obama? But in fact, the mutt, I still have it. It's my #1 seller. So they brought me a lot of business. I don't know if you remember, but I thank the community and the people that was against me. I thank them for being that way because they brought me a lot of money. I'm working on my mother's side because also on that side, my great-grandfather is white because that's New Orleans.
Right.
And it was similar like South Africa. It was, it was based on color.
That's why I think I got so interested in Evanston because people, it's so diverse and blah, blah, blah. But there's this whole, it's so not connected.
No,
we are two very separate communities.
Right. You're absolutely right. It is. I mean, it's not perfect now, but it's better now. But it's like the West Side was, just totally black and middle class, hardworking black people. The deal is that And I'm pretty sure you've been to cocktail parties and different parties on the North End and everything. And how many blacks do you see there?
None. Never.
But everybody loves to talk about diversity.
Right.
And is diversity when they're playing sports? I know one who was at the, like grammar school one thing. And what was interesting, when we did get to high school, especially with the girls and stuff, with the white girls and stuff, you had your own tables that you sat at. And you still got that kind of stuff.
All right, Hecky, thank you. Thanks for spending so much time.
My pleasure.